Okay. We're almost at
I know.
6 o'clock.
You are good. I will chat with him just to make sure he's understanding.
Yeah. Hey, Laura,
Yep.
just because we have all of our guests here early,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we could move the action up. I'm good with just to respect their time.
After the
move
consent
action up.
agenda? Or
Yeah,
do we,
right underneath citizen comment, and then we'll just kind of bump everything else down. So, because they're all here, I'd hate for them to sit on our meeting for whatever amount of time and waiting for us. If the board's okay with that.
any objections? No? Okay, good. All right. So
Oh.
it is now 6 o'clock, and I will call the Wenatchee School Board meeting of June 23rd, 2020 to order. Welcome, everybody. The first item, okay, so I guess for the sake of the minutes, we are reordering the agenda. And we will be moving action item, which is numeral 6 on our agenda, up to the place of numeral 4, which is just under citizen comments. And the rest of the agenda will proceed as planned. And there's a fly flying around my head. So if I start swatting on something, I haven't lost my mind. Really. Okay, so on the consent agenda today, which is our first item, we have the minutes from our May 26th meeting, our June 2nd meeting, our June 4th meeting, and our June 9th meeting. We also have vouchers and payroll, personnel report, a surplus report, a long list of contracts, and our May financial report. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
This is Julie. I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Great, thank you.
I'll second Michelle.
Super. Okay, so is there any discussion about that?
Nope.
Okay. So we'll be doing a roll call vote, and we'll start with Maria.
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
and I am an aye as well. So motion passes. Thank you. Next, we have citizen comment on our agenda. Is there anyone who is a guest who is wishing to make a citizen comment this evening? And we would know that because they would be telling Kim, correct?
He has
Kim,
none.
if I don't see you, I'm assuming there are none. Okay. Next, we are moving on, as I mentioned before, to the sale of the spring water property. And who's going to take this one?
Mark Helm will be leading us and then introducing some different people. So he will give you a quick background as to this was action the board took last spring. Mark, you want to walk us through what we're doing here tonight?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay, great. All right, so so what I thought I'd do is I'll give you a quick overview. Greg Thompson will then come on, give a little bit more detail. We then have Rob Jammerman, City Engineer, and Mayor Kuntz, hopefully on the line as well. And then we'll just turn it over to you guys for questions. You can ask Greg, myself, or Rob, or Frank any questions you might have. So, like Paul said, back in the spring, the board approved the sale of some property to the city for a road. And we then worked with an engineer. We hired an engineer named Dave Allen to work on behalf of the school district. And then we used our Davis Arneal law firm, Brian Maroney from that firm, to help create the purchase sale agreement. Obviously, they were keeping our best interests in mind. And as you can see on the board report, the property was appraised at $140,000 that we would be selling to the city. So that's the quick overview. Greg, if you want to get on and give a little bit more detail, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, the city came to the district back in September with the design. The road has pretty much remained unchanged, the location of that road. There were some questions about infiltration swale In the first design, we had about an infiltration swale at the top of spring water that was about 150 feet by 150 feet easement. We had Dave Allen take a look at that as well as the total road design. We started working it, came up with some different iterations of locations for the stormwater retention ponds. Did some soils testing. The designer of the project did some soils testing so we could evaluate what kind of infiltration we'd have with the hopes of better locating our ponds or reducing their size. After looking at several options, we decided the best location for that retention pond, infiltration pond, was back where the original design was. We were able to reduce it in size down to about a 70 foot by 54 foot. As I previously mentioned, it started out about 150 feet by 150 feet. The pond itself, that's the easement size. The pond itself is about 50 by 40 feet. It did increase a little in depth from 5 feet to 7 feet, not an appreciable difference. The pond, the way we have it set up right now, the pond will remain on district property and it's just an easement to the city. And the reason we're doing that is that gives us flexibility in the future to relocate this pond or modify it to a different design, as long as we meet the necessary engineered requirements. We can move that anywhere onto our property that we'd like to. The pond is fed by drainage ditches along the road. The last 100 feet of the drainage ditch is a biofiltration swale, which just widens the ditch slightly. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Okay.
So board, any questions, board?
Yes, I didn't find it in the agreement because there were 500 and some pages associated with this document. And so I'd like to know who is in control of maintenance of the pond and where is that identified? I missed that in the agreement.
So maybe Ron, if you pull up the map of most of the current design, you can see the pond is what I would call the current Springwater Street. Yeah, there you can see it. You can see it right there on the kind of the middle left of the design. That's where the retention pond will be, up right in there.
Mm-hmm. And who's responsible for maintaining it?
I don't know the answer to that. Greg or Rob?
Yeah, I'm Rob Jammerman here, Public Works Director. So in the purchase and sale agreement, the city will take over the maintenance of that pond. It'll be part of our stormwater infrastructure. The grounds around it are still belonging to the school district, but we'll maintain all of the pond and any vegetation within the pond.
Okay, so including scraping it if it gets clogged or whatever's necessary for that.
That's correct.
Okay. And can you, do any of you know what section of the purchase and sale agreement that's in? Because I'm scrolling back and forth and trying to read and listen.
Should be a separate attachment. That should be a separate attachment from the road on the purchase sale agreement is listed in words, legal description. So this map was an attachment to all of that Kim put together in your packet.
Sure. But where?
I don't know where it is. Yeah, I know where it is in that packet. I don't know where, what order that is. I don't have that in front of me.
There's no gas in it.
Other questions as Kim and I are searching through the document right now? Other questions that board members have?
I just thought it was interesting in the appraisal that the appraisers made a note on page 26 that we have discussed the hillside being unusable for building, or the information was presented to us that the hillside was unbuildable. On the second paragraph under physically possible on page 26, the appraisers say that that is contrary to what is known to them. So they do see usable value in the hillside. So I just thought that was interesting.
Other board members?
So going back to what Laura said, I'm not seeing that in the contract either, that the city is responsible for the retainment ponds. Could you point us to where that is indicated? What page?
I'm just looking at them quickly, but I think that's going to be in Exhibit C, one of the easements and joint maintenance agreements.
That's where I was looking for it, but I didn't see the specific wording. But again, I was trying to read it quickly. So I just want to verify that it is there.
I don't actually see it either. It says a joint use and maintenance agreement shall be entered into between grantor and grantee. Page 18, item 3B. And that perhaps is an annex that is not part of our presentation.
Okay, thank you, Martin.
Shouldn't we be seeing that because it's still a contract?
Slightly down from that, I think.
Yeah, I would like to see
Gone
that.
past me.
I would like to see that prior to final approval.
Item B in the center of the page.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
we
the
can-
word
we
note
can-
is very general. So if the city is actually in charge of the maintenance of that pond, and that's what the plan is, I would like to see that we're approving that in the contract as well. So we could potentially, I mean, do we have a special meeting scheduled for next Tuesday? It's still June.
We do.
We could potentially take action next week if that could get cleaned up.
I'm sure we can get our attorney to add that in there and work with the city on that.
Yeah, I'm looking at this language and racking my brain because I know we talked about it at length several times, but I'm not seeing it attached to this, but we certainly can get that to you by next week. There's no problem with that.
So it appears that, all the legal gobbledygook and legal description and all that, what I discern from that is that we are actually selling 2.23 acres and 0.106 is the easement. Is that a correct interpretation? Don't you like that legal gobbledygook, Julie?
I won't take offense. It makes sense to me, but
So is that correct? 2.23 acres is what we're selling, and we're providing 0.106 in an easement?
That's correct.
Yes.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Great. So Are there any other questions from board members?
I just want to confirm that our legal team has done their once or twice over of all the agreement, contract, drawings and everything. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
That is
And I guess for the record, this is a legislative action, so there's not really a technical conflict of interest, but I just want to make it known to the board that our office does work for the city of Wenatchee in employment matters. So it's not anything related to this. The sale to the city is not necessarily a conflict, but I know there's some private development issues underlying it as well that our office has worked with folks on. I personally have limited knowledge or involvement of it, but if that makes anyone uncomfortable for purposes of final action, I could abstain from the vote, but because this is legislative, it's not a technical conflict of interest that I would be unable to participate in.
Thank you for bringing that up, Julie. It's good to be forthright about those. Yeah. I don't have a problem with it personally, but whatever you think. Okay.
I think
So we will get our attorney to work with the city and get that added into the purchase agreement and have it ready for you for the next board meeting next week sometime. Correct?
Okay. Yeah, we're meeting on Tuesday at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
So if we could have it, well, sooner we could have it to look at it, the better, I guess.
Yep. Yep.
Sorry, that short timing, but do appreciate the city, coming to us and being able to work through this important safety measure. We have needed a second access out of that area for fire safety for a long, long time. And I think not all of you were on the board when we originally were presented with the idea from the city. And it was the board's commitment, to help contribute to public safety at that time. That was of paramount importance to us. And I think it would still be, very important. So appreciate the city bringing this to us and giving us the opportunity to contribute to that effort. And give us $140,000. Okay, so moving on. Unless anybody else has anything, we'll move to the next agenda item. Going back up to special presentations, and we're getting a transition plan update.
Yeah. So this feels like that happened like 7 years ago when I first came to the district. COVID has a way of doing that to you. So Ron, if you'd throw the transition plan up there, I'd appreciate it. And honestly, had a great partner in Diana and many others to make this work. But Diana and I worked really closely together to make this transition plan occur. Did not time this, but we're in the same shirt, but it feels like that's the only thing that's similar from way back in July. I'm old, I'm haggard, feel like I've aged in dog years. But other than that, that's the only similarity with that picture and myself. It really was such an important time for me to really have a much deeper understanding of our district, of our community, from parents, students, staff, board members, all the way across. Ron, we can go to the next slide. And part of that plan were these goals, and I'm really proud. And Diana and I are going to tag team this, so Diana, jump in whenever. Really trying to hit these goals, and coming out of the gate way back in July around those superintendent and board relationships, and really working on our governance practices and our procedures and the different structures that we were going to work from. And I think that for me, and I believe the former board, felt like that was such a really good launching point for us. as a team. And we really did talk a lot about that as a team, that we are in this together as the board, superintendent, and moving forward to that idea around really continuing to be supportive around the positive district culture and climate. Again, me building and then sustaining those relationships with the different stakeholders in our community. Having a deeper understanding of the instructional practices and systems and structures within our district. And huge shout out. I went into Larry's office tonight and told him this personally. But without him, because on the finance side of the learning curve, it was straight up and down. There was no curve to that. That was hitting a brick wall and looking straight up. And I really do sincerely appreciate Larry's guidance and helping me and being kind, even though I've asked the same question 50 different times. He was able to really help me navigate the understanding. We had just, as a state, really started embracing the McCleary, and that was significantly different for everybody. So putting in, the new understanding of the state, the McCleary, he was just a real good partner for me, and a willing partner to be honest around helping me figure those pieces out. And then ultimately is about learn the organizational structures and functions, trying to be in the different departments, hearing from different individuals about how we operate as an organization. So feel like as we went through this whole process, we were able to dive deeply into each one, which will help us ultimately really move us forward our strategic plan. This is that foundation of that strategic plan. Diana, anything you would say on this slide here?
Yeah, absolutely. We started drafting that on July 1st, actually before July 1st when Paul arrived in Wenatchee. So these were our plans for the year. So this is what we were shooting for. And I believe early on that we touched on a lot of these different areas and made significant strides to address each one. Back in March, COVID-19 happened and really forced us to take deeper dives into a lot of these areas, like understanding our finances even more than before and in different ways. And then organizational structures and functions. I would say that Paul has had a full immersion in more ways than one in how our organization structures work and how maybe they didn't work well. And we've had to make some decisions. I know Paul maybe thought in the beginning that we weren't going to make a lot of changes, but we were forced to make changes, all improvements for the school district. But that was one area that really changed for us, was how we approached each one of these goals. They really happened, and they happened intensely. So to look back, from a year ago to where we are now, it's pretty incredible what has been able to be accomplished. And I feel pretty strongly that Paul has hit a lot of these targets for sure.
Absolutely. Ron, move us on to the next slide, please. Just take a moment of looking at, the number of engagement and what we were able to accomplish. And this kind of ties into exactly what Diana was talking about. We were everywhere. People were starting to get sick and tired of us on social media. Like, I don't want to see you anymore. I don't need to see you getting a library card. I don't need to see you anywhere. So we were out and about, really trying to engage our community on many different pieces. And Diana and I really did look back and say, how many people were we engaging in our large groups and our small groups? And there were times that I had a meeting one-on-one with a person. There are other times where it'd be a whole school. So the sizes really varied. And the different sessions with students and parents and staff, community, over 75 different times we were out in a listening kind of learning session environment. And then those community engagements, which were some of the most enjoyable, and really just from our service, groups, Kiwanis and Rotary and Lions, all of those really great organizations who are welcoming us in, being able to share a little bit of who I am, but more importantly, the story of our district, really engaging these different groups, from being student for a day up at the high school and at Orchard with my friend that I'm sitting there at the lunch table in that bottom picture. But just an opportunity to truly, using Diana's word, to truly immerse myself into the organization to understand it. And it was really great because Diana was with me literally there might have been one or two events that we weren't together for, but we were literally in there together because it was important for us to take notes, really listen in, ask deeper questions, sit with students. I still think of the AVID classes that we sat in and really hearing perspectives of students about their school and about their learning. Those were some of the most impactful. Or when a young fourth grade student over at Mission View really talked to us about struggles around reading, those impactful pieces when kids were speaking directly to us. It was an incredible journey from July through January. And Diana's right. I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to get to all the different places we had set out, but we were. And it really has made a big impact on how I view our district and the work we need to do. Diana?
Yeah, I would just add that visibility was really important for Paul, I think, early on, just for people to have an opportunity to even say hi and come up and talk to him. So establishing that approachability was really, I think, essential early in that engagement process. And then really trying to make sure that we were creating opportunities and platforms for people to share with Paul and to be heard. So a lot of the listening sessions that we did in schools with staff, with our parent groups, were tremendously valuable to just listen and just kind of take in and be a sponge. And so I think that was really effective in sort of introducing him into a community where he was new and helping him establish a network, but also to, create a sense that he is listening and taking in everything that people are saying. We documented, I took detailed notes from each one of these meetings, so we have all of that information captured as well. So it was really valuable, even for me as somebody who's worked for the district for a number of years, just to get back out there into the schools and to hear from kids and hear from staff and hear from parents about what some of the concerns were, and things that they had hoped for the future. So it was tremendously valuable for me as well as we move forward into our next phase of strategic planning.
Yeah, and the one thing that Diana and I really worked hard on is making sure no matter where we were, people felt like they could tell us their honest story, their truth. There were times that, and we were very clear. Diana was not taking down names. That wasn't the intent of it. It was really around themes and messages and really trying to make sure people felt comfortable in the room. And there were a couple of times where somebody was like, put down your pencil, Diana. I just want to have this moment, because we wanted to create that space that people felt like, and they knew that it was okay to share, because we understood that if we were just getting a varnished version of their truth, it wasn't going to help us. So we really did embrace their truths and try to make sure that we listened with great intent. Ron, next slide.
I would add just one more quick thing too. One of the best questions I think that we asked people was, who else should we be talking to?
Yes.
So that was really important for us to ask that question. Who else should we be hearing from, just to make sure that we weren't missing really anybody? And I would say that even beyond January, this process continues. So stakeholder engagement just doesn't end. It's ongoing. It's a key part of being superintendent and doing our work to communicate with all of our stakeholders.
And this next piece is critical, because as much as we were out there and the number of touches we had with that in person, we needed to go bigger and broader. And this was a way for us to be able to do that, was to create the Stakeholder Survey. And we had over 1,300 people engage with us and give us incredible feedback, answer some questions. But their commentary was the piece that we spent hours going through and really trying to understand what all of our stakeholders are saying to us, for us to know and understand. Diana?
Yeah, I would add that a real key factor or purpose behind the stakeholder survey was to really help us reflect on who we are as a school district, kind of a situational analysis of who we were at that point in time. So a lot of the feedback that we'll be sharing here in the next slide or two really helped us understand who we were. And with a new superintendent on board, I think that gave Paul a greater understanding of the job ahead and the work to be done.
Mm-hmm. We can go on to the next one. And this is really, we wanted to see from the survey, what are those priorities? How did the board's values line up with the community? And then we had told the board about this, that we were going to do something a little bold. We're going to ask the stakeholders to grade us from an A to an F in language that people understood around schools. And the overall, people gave us a C of what we're doing. And I think an honest reflection, it feels like it's kind of where we're at. So it was really interesting. But going to the district priorities, challenging academics, and we heard that in many different ways, from lack of rigor, the whole challenge, the expectations. Those were some of the, those were the three key words that we heard on that topic a lot. School safety, the time to make sure that, and again, this is moving into when the board had a number of conversations around the safety of our facilities and the work we're still currently doing with the safety of our facilities, and really making sure that our students are safe and that things are going well. Social emotional learning, key, but it was really great that I'm not sure what I'm seeing. Ron, I'm seeing different things.
Yeah,
I don't know what the
over to another tab for some reason.
Okay.
It says we're done with our presentation.
Yeah, so we're all done, folks. Thanks for
I got too
coming.
many tabs open in my PDF viewer, and it
Enough
flipped over.
talking for you, Paul.
Which is not the most subtle way that Ron's ever told me to shut up, but
Moving on.
yeah, so the social emotional learning, key. Early childhood education. I know this is an important one for many on our board, but it was interesting to see that it rose to the level within the survey of over 1,300 people. Then that student-teacher relationship. Diana, you want to talk about the district priorities a little bit from your perspective? And then we'll move on to board values.
Yeah, just to explain, where did the district priorities come from in the first place? So all the listening and learning that we did, all the notes that we took the themes from all of those different sessions, and we compiled those into the survey for people to prioritize. And I think we ended up somewhere in the ballpark of about 20 different themes or topics. And that's what people prioritize. So you're just seeing the top 5 that stakeholders responded to. I just felt like that was a good snapshot. They're all prioritized 1 through 20, though, if we want to take a deeper dive into the survey at a later time. But these were just the top 5 results, again, from those different themes that emerged from all of the good discussions that we had, whether that was in person or through a staff. We did a staff follow-up survey for each focus group we had or interaction that we had with staff. So that's where those actually came from. And then, do you want me to jump into board values? Or
yeah, just kind of talk about
okay.
what we did with that and how we wanted to engage the community on the board's values.
Yeah, so if we reflect back to at the time in which we did this survey, the board was really establishing their priorities, their values. And we felt like this was a good opportunity, because we were asking stakeholders to share their feedback with us, to really test drive those values, to make sure that those were the right ones. So what you're seeing right now is I just listed the percentage of support for those. So we had a ranking scale of extremely important to not important, essentially. So 64% of people said excellence was important, 61 accountability, and 64 for equity, which is a pretty solid ranking. So the stakeholders definitely did support the board's choice in those 3 values.
Yeah, I was actually really pleased with that, with the support behind those broad overarching values for us. So that's kind of that, again, high level of what the survey gave back to us. Felt like it was important feedback as we continue to move forward, and again with the eye on the strategic plan. Ron, next one.
One more quick thing. Sorry, Paul.
You're good.
I wanted to point out too that for the letter grade, not only did we grade ourselves as a district or ask for that grading, but we also asked people who had kids in school to assign a letter grade to each individual school. So that's more data we have kind of on the back end that we've shared with principals as well. But it gives us a really good indicator of where we're at. And right now we're in the middle of the road. We know we have a lot of work to do. So that C is pretty solid right there. But hopefully in the future, we're going to see that turn into an A.
Yeah, nicely said. And then this is the SWOT analysis of the top 5, those strengths, those weaknesses, those opportunities, those areas to improve, and obstacles. You know, I think the piece that, as Diana highlighted, that the bold, you know, you see it found in the top 5 of at least 3 of the categories. You can kind of look there. I'm not going to go through each one, but you can look across and see some themes that continue to be highlighted. We heard a lot about the high school. We heard a lot about the high school, but it was interesting that it was in the opportunities. It was and in the areas to improve. So that was fascinating. Really, I think people see that there's such an incredible moment in time for the high school to really continue to improve and continue to move forward. So those were, I think that one was really interesting. The strengths, fascinating, the caring qualified staff, the working together, interventions. So a lot of different ideas here, but some similarities that really drew our attention about what are those pieces that we're going to do. With the leadership, it really spanned all different types of leadership, from district leadership, board leadership, school leadership. It just across the board, just leadership. It didn't hone in on one specific area of saying, you know, the superintendent this or this group here. It really was across the board. Budget, I think they all recognize, is always an obstacle. Diana, what would you add in here?
Yeah, I would just explain a little bit about how we generated the SWOT analysis. So these were open-ended questions where we asked people to tell us what the district's strengths are, what are areas to improve, and so forth. So we didn't provide them a list of things. So these, I know you've seen the word kind of clouds that we've shared it in past presentations. What Qualtrics, our survey system, does is it can pull out the number of times that key terms or keywords are said in those kind of open-ended question boxes. So that's where all of this came from. And again, you're just seeing the top 5 things that really emerged in each one of the 4 chunks of the SWOT analysis. But what is interesting is that many people identified our strengths as areas to improve or weakness, but also as opportunities or obstacles. So, you know, it fits into multiple categories, things like student opportunities. We have a lot of student opportunities. We can always improve on those. There's opportunity to grow them. So you kind of have to look at each one in a very broad sense, because there is a lot that goes into that. Like Paul said, for example, with leadership. Community involvement, I thought, was another one that was really fascinating. It's a strength that we have. We have an opportunity to expand that, but it can also be an obstacle. It can be challenging at times to engage the community in learning and keep them involved. So that's where kind of the data came from the SWOT, if that helps you understand how these topics emerged.
And you'll notice the facilities, you know, opportunities, areas to improve, and obstacles. I think they nailed that.
Yeah.
I think all of those areas kind of encompass our facilities and what they are and what they're not. Next slide, Ron. You know what the staff liked best about working in our district, and just, it's that staff, it's the students, it's that support, it's that collaboration. Again, really pulling out those key themes of what it means to be a WSD staff member here. So just a good reflection for all of us to know that these are key points as to why people keep coming back every day doing incredible work for our community, is because of the people they work with, their students, the support and the collaboration that they're hanging out with. Diana?
Yeah, and this particular set of information came from the follow-up surveys that we provided to staff after each time we went and had an interaction with them in their office space, their department, or at their school. So we asked the same couple of questions, which was, what do you like? What do you not like? What do you want us to know? And so open-ended questions, same thing. The number of times that these topics came up in those open-ended questions was how we came up with these 4 things. But our staff really do appreciate their peers and colleagues. They care deeply about their students. They appreciate the support that they're getting, but they do want more. And they really value collaboration time.
Next slide, Ron. So this will be the flip side of it. What staff would change. Again, same philosophy that Diana just talked about, with student support, collaboration time, behavior. Recognizing that at times our staff struggles with some of the student behavior, and that we've got to figure out how to continue to support them.
Yeah, and on this one, I don't have as many, because these were really the 3 predominant topics that came up repeatedly, and some of them are connected. For example, student support and behavior. Our staff really felt like they needed more support with increasing student behaviors happening in the classroom. But they also, appreciated the support that they were getting, but they need more of it. But also recognizing that behavior has increased and they need additional support there, and that collaboration time really was helping them become better teachers and address many of the student issues that can be foundational to the manifestation of that ultimate behavior.
Yeah. Ron, next slide. So this whole idea about what's next, that was a great day up at the park with the sleds and partnering with Columbia Valley Hospital. I mean, just what a great day out there. But really, that's what's next, is that post-COVID survey, and really engaging in the strategic planning. Board did a lot of great work around our values, and that's going to be the foundation which everything is moving off of and moving toward a really strong strategic plan. So we have to continue moving that forward. Our original goal was to have a soft launch for a new strategic plan in that winter, that December, January. We're going to try. It's going to be a lot of work, and who knows with COVID and what other joys it's going to bring to us in this school year. But our goal is that we would be able to do a soft launch of a new strategic plan in that springtime and that May, and then with the actual launch for that next school year. And that's still being pretty aggressive with everything that we're trying to deal with currently with COVID. But that's going to be a lot of time with the board, myself, the cabinet team, and then engaging all pretty much the same stakeholders again to get feedback, and really having a feedback loop on all the different topics we're discussing. Because ultimately, it has to be the community's plan. We all have to be able to say, yeah, we're good, we're moving forward, we understand it deeply. But all of this work, all of this transition work really helps us to understand our community better, and where the priorities lie, and where the work where we need to be focusing work at. And some of those areas are in the academics, others, as you saw, in the facilities, but there's work to be done. And this gives us a pathway forward. Diana?
Yeah, I would just mention to you the post-COVID survey. As I was pulling this presentation together and reflecting back, I went, the district has undergone a dramatic shift. Education has changed across our state and country and locally. We are not the same institution that we were when we first did that stakeholder survey. So I believe that there's value in doing it again, because I think that our priorities and our stakeholders assigned priorities for us will change just based on where we're at right now. So I think it's worth maybe doing a modified version of the same survey, just because there has been such dramatic change that has happened over the last 4 months. So that's something that I would like us to look at again as kind of a first step in that strategic planning process, is to really just ask those same questions again to get a better sense of who we are at this point in time.
I would agree. All right, board, enough of us, and push it over to you for any questions, comments,
I
feedback.
think we have one more slide.
Oh, do we?
There we go.
I
Yeah,
apologize.
there it is.
There it is. See, my brain has been on reopening and starting schools.
I know.
Trying to adjust that brain template.
Well, and you really touched on a lot of this, Paul, so I can
Yeah.
just take it from here. I'll bring it home.
There you go.
So really what this slide is just a summary of all the things that, you know, are in front of us, and working together as partners, you know, with our school board, with our community, to really help create that vision and direction for the district that encompasses the board's values, so that we can begin living those, and then also creating those actionable strategies, which would ultimately be part of that strategic plan. But that plan for the future that will help guide and focus our work as we move forward. I think we've done a good job over the last 6 months or so of using those board values in lieu of having that strategic plan in place to really help guide our work. So I think we'll just continue to have more clarity, consistency, and purpose by developing that core mission through the work that we have ahead of us.
All right, now board.
It seems like it's been forever since we've had a strategic plan to guide our work, and so this is exciting to see, you know, the progress, and at the same time to feel a little frustrated with all the delays regarding COVID. But I think it's a heavy lift, and I personally appreciate all that you two have put into it, because it seems like a long time ago, but when a few months ago, we were seeing your face every 5 minutes on the Facebook feed doing this or that, meeting, you know, one community member or another. And I certainly heard quite a lot from folks about how they appreciated the fact that you got out there and they got to meet you personally. So, yeah.
Thank you. And it really was a pleasure. I loved it. I loved all the different engagements. Because everyone was so unique and everybody's perspective is so unique. So it just helped me understand our district so well. But thank you.
So I really appreciate this presentation and kind of that whole timeline from a year ago to January, kind of all the work that was done, and then the stakeholder survey that happened right before COVID. And let's not forget the surveys that you've had to do in the last couple of months with about learning and fall schedules and all that good stuff. In fact, we still have one last day of survey, right, for our parents. So, and that wasn't even in this presentation. So no. we know how hard you and Diana and all the staff has been working in terms of especially with the whole COVID-19 kind of throws a wrench into, okay, we got to shift direction a little bit here. I just appreciate that you're able to kind of give us this reflection over the past year, despite all the circumstances that have been thrown in our direction, in everybody's direction in the last 3 months. So kudos to you and all your team. And I look forward to kind of what the year ahead is going to bring. I know it's going to bring challenges, but I am confident in the team that we have at the district, that you all are going to be rising to the occasion. And, you know, if we have to put things on hold, that's okay. But I'm really excited to hear all the results of the stakeholder survey. I know we kind of didn't get to hear those for a long time, so it's kind of exciting to hear that that the community supports the board's values. I think that's great, and you know, that gives me confidence that we are representing the public and their interests in what they want to see in the district. So great job. And you know, I know we've done a lot of surveys lately. So yeah, I'm sure it won't be our last survey, but that was a really big survey. I know, the stakeholder survey. So, you know, hopefully once we get through COVID-19 and things calm down, maybe we can rerun it at that point. But I think for now, the strategic plan, I think, you know, that it can continue to do work. We have good, solid data. I do echo that. I think a future stakeholder survey, maybe on our progress on the strategic plan, might be good, but I don't know if we have to ask all the same questions we already did. You know, you guys did a lot of work on that. And maybe how we're doing, you know, when it's post-recovery of COVID or something, I don't know. But I know that you all have engaged astronomically. We've had so many equity issues that we already knew were there, but of course that got unearthed to a greater extent with COVID-19. And, you know, and the fact that you guys were doing all this on top of how are we going to address those big issues, you know, I'm just in awe of our staff every day. I really am. So thank you all for doing such a great job and in keeping your eye on the ball and moving forward. So that's what we will continue to do with you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Other board members? Nope. Maria?
I also want to say, you know, good, you know, good work out there. And I think all of Wenatchee, actually probably all of Chelan County, knows who Paul is and can recognize him, whether you have kids in the district or not. I'm really excited and looking forward to where the, you know, being out there, being exposed and doing all the listening and learning. I'm hoping to see now, okay, let's take the information that we heard and let's apply it to our system. And I think once, you know, we start doing that, we're going to start seeing changes within the system, and hopefully the, you know, that whole the equity gap starts narrowing, and it addresses a lot of concerns that are within our district. You know, also the current state of our nation, I think, you know, that also will have an impact in our system. So I'm looking forward to, you know, putting those listening and learning sessions into action. And I think it'll be a good thing for our district. So thank you.
Thank you, Maria. And you're right. I mean, that next piece is the actionable work. And then looking at that how are we measuring, how are we quantifying our slow progress towards, you know, 95% of all students reading at grade level, that 95% of our students are able to handle the challenge mathematically at each grade level. How do we really engage our kids on a daily basis to become these incredible global citizens? And that's what this big work is. But I really appreciate the board recognizing team, because this is the team is really solid, because this work, just on this one example, does not happen without Diana Haglund. I'm good at going out, shaking hands, doing my thing. You wind me up and you send me out there. I am really good at that stuff. But honestly, it's my incredible team that continues to lift us up and move us forward in each of these areas. This presentation tonight, 100% Diana. Just, it's a reflection of the quality of work that continues to go out there. And again, to your point, Maria, you're going to be seeing that same thing in very different areas in the coming months when we take on chunks of this as part of our strategic plan, because we're not taking on everything. We're going to be really precise and strategic as to what we're going to do and how we're going to tackle different areas. But thank you.
I might say,
And I would add,
go. Keeping it simple.
Go ahead.
It's very solidly presented. It's a very solid platform, and you've got something that you can move forward from very well. Well done.
Thank you, Martin.
And I was just going to say, as I looked at this and I was looking towards the future, I went, if we can close the year of COVID-19 and we are currently making plans to reopen schools, which is crazy, but if we can do that, the strategic plan, I mean, it is so doable. I mean, we got this in a very big way. So we've moved mountains this year, and our team is more aligned and connected and collaborating than ever before. And so that strategic plan, I feel like, will be a much easier lift for us because of the crisis. Those are the crazy things that have come out of experiencing a crisis as a team. So I want to point that out, because I think that's really going to help us move the needle on getting that strategic plan moving forward.
Agreed.
Thank you, Diana. Okay, so moving forward, we are now on a rigorous, stimulating conversation on budget, if I'm not.
We are. And tonight, we've got a 42-page budget PowerPoint, but we're really going to dive into 2 to 3 of those pages, and Larry's going to do that diving in. The PowerPoint itself is the same exact one that we showed at the workshop and that we've continued to build on. Neither Larry or I feel like we have to go back and review that again. But if there's something within the PowerPoint that you want, because Larry's going to be navigating it, that Larry can go back to those points. But on the workshop, board members asked some really great questions. And what we want to do is focus in on those questions and make sure the board feels really comfortable as we get ready to post the F-195 to the community. So with that, Larry, you want to take us into the kind of those questions that board members asked, and then the response to those questions.
Sure. And we're going to start on, there's 4 slides. Let me just turn to them real quick here and I'll pull it over. I'm going to, I got to share it here. Hold on. And I'm going to share where it is.
Okay. Are you sending magnifying glasses with us?
Yeah. Stand this up here. Here we go. All right.
Wow.
So can you see that now?
Yeah. You want to go to present?
Yep. Present. Yeah. Slideshow. There we go.
Perfect.
Okay. And I'll go back. Okay. So we're going to start here. There's 4 slides here, and they were all intended to kind of respond to your questions on that from the study session. And the first question was, why the levy increase was really kind of the basic question that was being asked. And the data on this slide is all the data that we talked about in the study session. It's just kind of arranged differently to kind of show you that what is leading up to the need for the levy increase, the $2.5 million levy increase. And we talked about the this was the first year, this coming year is the first year of a 1% loss in regionalization, which will be occurring for over a 6-year period. The declining local effort and assistance because of increased assessed valuation, loss of, this one we didn't talk about, the loss of indirect revenues due to lower indirect rates. We're only allowed to charge indirects on state and federal programs. Most of them are on the federal level, but it went from 3.78% down to 2.6%. So we're not getting as much these indirect revenues. And the state recovery rate changed from 14.93, almost 15% down to 13. So that's what was driving the $135,000 loss. We've got a kind of a catch-all category in here for the combination of salary and benefit increases, unfunded compensation and positions, and additional BEA positions and other kind of all lumped together. I could have put that on about 6 different pages, but I just wanted to consolidate all that together. Increase in local support. We had a slide about this where we've got some increase in support for a variety of different areas, special ed, high cap, food service, pupil transportation, and that was about $394,000. We talked about the technology replacement monies that increased for the 5-year replacement plan, $689,000. We talked about utilities and insurance, and both those numbers are there, and that totals $2.5 million. So, and the point behind this was just kind of show a nexus to what's changing. We've got some decreasing revenues, and we have increasing expenditures. And kind of in the middle, we have a reduction in indirect revenues from our state and federal programs. Any questions?
Yeah, the middle part is confusing me a little bit. Increase in local support for programs. That's because of a funding decrease?
It's an increase in cost for government. The costs are escalating faster than revenues, budgeted revenues. So the district has provided, like special ed, was budgeted about $350,000 local support in the 19-20 budget. In the 2021 budget, that increased to $500,000. So the connection between the gap between revenues and expenditures has grown a little bit in each one of those.
Isn't it true that we received an increase in special ed funding?
We did receive an increase in special ed funding, and expenditures are increasing faster. We budgeted, this year we budgeted, submitted safety net applications for about 611,000. Looks like we'll probably get all of that. But for this next year, we budgeted, we weren't sure if we were, but this next year we budgeted about 400,000 in safety net. So perhaps the district will be able to collect 600,000, but 400,000 seems to be safe. But yes, our expenditures are increasing faster than revenues.
And is that mainly, given that our budget is 84% salaries and benefits, is that the main contributing factor to the increases faster than the revenues?
It is, yeah. It is and we've got decreasing revenues is what's is the big part. We're escalating costs. We've got salaries and benefits that are being escalated by IPP and the CBA and all of that. And we have some increases in costs that we talked about at the study session. And the big buckets were the 3 at the bottom of this list. And so revenues aren't keeping up with our expenditures.
Larry, I have a question about the technology replacement and enhancement.
Yep.
Are we talking about costs that have incurred because we were updating because of COVID-19? I thought we had CARES dollars, or that has to be paid back. Could you clarify?
Yeah, we have some costs that we've incurred this year because of COVID. There's big portion of those are technology, which we talked about in the study session. In those, yeah, those are going to be, majority of those are going to be reimbursed by, if they get in by August, by the claiming period, this July, August claiming period, will be covered by the CARES Act. This number, the $689,000, is over and above that number. It's the actual replacement and addition to the current technology. It's part of the 5-year plan.
So that's separate from what we needed to get for COVID-19. That's for ongoing replacement.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
New reality. Yep.
Can I just ask a question about that? Because when we asked this question last time, I understood that we recognized a structural need to enhance and strengthen our technology, hardware and software, not just from COVID-19, but from the point of view of being able to do anything and everything as we go out into future years, and that this was an acceleration and an enhancement, and that's the 689. Is that right? Yeah.
You're correct, Martin. We recognize, and Ron was the one who recognized this, with or without COVID, we needed to put significant funding towards technology to make that upgrade. The COVID just accelerated that tenfold. And Ron, if you want to jump in there too, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to remember is not only what Martin just pointed out, it's also a very predictable replacement cycle. We've had some haphazard replacement cycles in the past, and that was just due to available funding and prioritization of past. And this gives us a better model to make sure our kid devices, staff devices, servers, software systems are updated enough so that we don't fall behind again in that refresh cycle.
And it's a key piece, and the board, I'm sure, is aware of this, but once you fall behind on that refresh cycle, it is a deep hole to dig out of. But this, again, this is a must-have in our current situation, in our situation as we look at next year. And I'll update COVID-19 later on in superintendent report. But these devices are, it's not a nice to have anymore. It is a must-have, and we need them in our students' hands as we get ready to open up our next school year on August 26th.
And what I wrote in my notes from the budget meeting that we had was that the outcome of this expenditure is that by fall, 100% of our students will have a device.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. And I think 100% of our students will have a device. And then tacking back onto what Ron said, then we're going to be on a really nice refresh cycle that's not going to have to eat a $700,000 chunk on a regular basis. We're really going to plan these out to make sure that we continue a good refresh update as we continue to go along our path.
And our refresh cycle is around 6 years, where industry is around 4. We're still trying to get more out of things than what is industry standard, but we just aren't in a position of supporting that budgetarily. This is already a big ask, and it's already a big investment in the devices for kids and staff both.
Larry, you want to go on to your next slide?
This slide is just kind of showing you what the increase in levy from the current $1.73 shows. 172 in 2020. That's the math that I had to use in order to make that work. But the true rate is 173 and $1.73 in 2020 as well. And so it's the increase from $1.73 to $2.10. So you see down in this cell right here, this is the increase from the current levy in 2020 to the proposed levy of $11,489. And the number off to the right here is the increase from 2021 if we had a $1.73 levy versus a $2.10 levy, $2 million increase over $1.73. So that was intended to ask. And this modeling is based on assuming a 4% average AV growth each year, which you can see. You can't really see here, but that's what it's based on.
But you said that the assessor was predicting a higher rate, 6 to 8%.
Yeah. Talking with the assessor, I was told that 6% would be conservative, and it's most likely that it's probably going to be closer to 8% for this coming year. And the reason I use 4% is because if we have a cycle up and down, 4% seem to be over a long period of time seem to be a reasonable long-term projection.
So Larry, correct me if I'm wrong. If the assessor is right and it turns out to be 6%, the actual tax rate will be less than 210, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
And what's the timing on that? At what point, do we put the levy out to a ballot, and when does the assessor know what the
assessors typically have a pretty good estimate of, because it's the prior year assessed valuation that's used for the next year. So 2020 actual assessed valuation will be used for calculation of 2021 taxes. And so when the board will enter into a resolution, get it to the assessor in December, sometime November, December, and but typically in October, the assessors have a pretty solid idea of what the assessed valuation will be for the following year. There's a couple things that are still questionable at that point, like the utilities. There's an assessment for utilities, and sometimes those come in a little bit later. But they'll have residential and commercial most likely locked up by then.
Larry, correct me.
This is a banked.
Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, this is a banked capacity levy. This is by statute, right? This is not a voted, a lift or a voted levy.
Year to go, I believe.
21 is just this. Yes, it's just a decision.
Okay.
The new levy won't start until 2022, and the election will happen in February.
Well, Larry, this is what I was going to ask. We have 1 year left on the original levy at 290 or 280 or something like that. So we're actually electing as a board to approve less than 250 and less than the previously voted on amount. And we will have to have a new levy vote before we get to calendar year 2022. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, thank you for that.
Larry, do you want to go to that rollback slide? It seems like the perfect time to, to connect to that. So it connects to what Martin was talking about.
Yeah, and here's the actual rollback. And the proposed levy for 2021 is 11,489,000, and that's would be end up being a $2.4 million rollback of the voter approved amount, which was 13,689,000. And which is a change from the prior year. In 2020, there was a $9 million levy with a $4.2 million bill, and with a rate of $1.73. And this increase, the $2.4 million increase, is a calendar year increase. And so we're looking at fiscal year increases and calendar year increases. So when we're talking about taxes, we're always talking about calendar year, which overlap budget periods. Okay, so I'll go back to the slide that we just went by, and this one is wrong one. And this is the last slide, and so it's just the question, why is the budgeted revenues increasing? And a variety of reasons. We're increasing local taxes. We had some increase in apportionment revenues due to enrollment, a slight enrollment growth from budget to budget. And the apportionment formula includes an IPD of 6% or 0.6%, 1.06, and a third professional learning day is including that, so that increases a little bit. And of course, we lost 1% regionalization. So the growth in our state general purpose revenues, and that state general purpose revenue category also includes LEA. So we lost quite a bit of that. You saw that in the earlier slide. So those revenues aren't escalating very quickly. And you'll see in the special state purpose, we do have some escalations there, and that's primarily special ed growth, revenue growth due to enrollment growth, and the LAP, high poverty monies. So that's where they're getting those. And those are categorical monies. They are spent in those particular areas and not be used for basic ed. And then the next section down there is why is the budget expenditures increasing? You can see that our expenditures actually increased by 7.4% and $8 million. Majority of that is salaries and benefits, 6.6 million, and the remainder is MSOCs. And we've talked about utilities, insurance, and technology, and we add all that together. It's pretty close to that number. Of course, this is overall MSOCs, but it kind of gives you a general picture. So costs are escalating quicker than our general purpose revenues to support them. And if you look down below here, I just kind of broke out the certificated staffing changes from budget to budget for in just different categories for classifying certificates. So the first group is certificated. You can see special ed is where we had a big growth in the largest growth in staffing, and then categorical staffing increased by about 6.3. Most of that is LAP high poverty because there's more funding. Federal was a slight decrease, and basic ed, and I rolled in food service and transportation in there as well. All the support programs, and that overall increase for certificate staff was 1.3 FTE. Just hit that again. Okay. And then down below on classified, you can see special ed is that's where the growth is in classified staff. There's a little bit in categorical, and that's LAP again, and a little bit of growth in federal, and overall no growth in the support services, basically 5.8. So we don't have a lot of growth overall in FTE there, but we do have an escalation in costs that are driving where we are right now. Any other questions?
Of the increases in FTEs, are those district choices, or are those mandated to us by ratios that we're required to uphold?
We're held to a minimum ratio, and we have been increasing staffing at the K3 level to match. We're funded at 17 to 1 staffing level. So, but we funded fairly close to that in 1920. So, so that's really the only mandate that we have. And the rest of those staffing numbers, the special ed is just based on enrollment, and, supporting the enrollment. And LAP is most of the services that are provided for the high poverty programs are provided by staff. And so the high school increased its funding by a little over 500,000. Foothills increased a little over 100,000. So that translated into increase in staffing.
Okay.
We felt like that we were able to capture your questions from the workshop, and Larry presented those, the responses here. Feeling pretty good, board, about any other questions, because what will happen next is through July that the F-195 will be posted out to the community. And then when the board comes back in August, the board will take action on the budget itself. So it sits out there for others to look at, and then for the board to take action in that first meeting in August when we get back from a little hiatus.
Paul, I don't have anything to, excuse me, to add on 2021, but I do have something to add on the 4-year F-195, and it's actually the same thing that I said before. And it's one characteristic that I don't agree should be what we're proposing. The budget module assumes a slightly declining enrollment of students, and that's very reasonable, but we've maintained a fixed headcount on employees. And the end result of the 4-year projection is we are short about $3 or somewhere between $3 and $4 million on our minimum 5% minimum fund balance policy. And I don't think that this is consistent with the board showing that we're committed to responsible fiscal governance, because if we were, we would take some action to reduce costs and maintain ourselves above the 5%. So I realize this is a projection, a provision, and kind of devices, but I really believe we should make a change at least in the 4th year to reflect that we are ready, we recognize it, and we won't just let it drift.
Yeah, and we've actually talked about that, and I've discussed that with Karen. She's gonna revise the F-195F to show some reductions in staffing so that we have a more reasonable picture of what the budget would look like. You're right. From a bonding standpoint, agency standpoint, they don't want to see a lot of a significant decline. They want you to show that you have responsible fiscal management. So that will be reflected in the F-195 before this year.
Okay, thank you, because I think that is a wise thing to do.
Yep, I agree. That's what we did last year.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll make that adjustment before we post that to the public.
So I have 2 questions related. One, to tag into the enrollment piece for the next 4-year budget. Larry, you had shared at our budget workshop that you were putting a projected lowered number for enrollment, but you were not including the charter school potentially opening. And I'm wondering if we've had any updates and when, because I kind of hate to see if they're opening actually not this fall, but next fall. I kind of hate to see that that's a big budget change at that time, and that we're not saying, oh, we have to figure it in now, but I think we have to be a little more proactive if they are going to open in fall of 21. So that's my first question. And my second is the meeting when we come back, when we're talking about the budget, is that when we're going to be making final decisions about the levy?
On this one for the $2.10?
Yes.
Yes, for this. And then in February, the board will take action to go to the voters.
Okay.
So that will renew the 4-year levy.
Okay. So again, about the enrollment, what are thoughts on that?
I think they are good thoughts. One of the updates that did come out was they are working in agreement to secure their facility and then looking for enhancements and going down that road. So I think they feel very confident that they will be opening up again that following year, that 21-22 school year is their opening date, and they're feeling pretty confident based off of the information that I received in one of their updates around their facilities, which is a big capital expense for them. So they must be feeling pretty good. And that just happened a week or so ago that we got that update. So I would concur, probably, Michelle, that it's something that we do probably, it's looking more and more like it will happen in some capacity. Is it 70 kids? I don't know. What is that plan that we should be putting together? Because I do believe COVID will impact all schools in some different ways. We just don't know what that is, but to be planful for it, probably not a bad idea now that they are putting dollars to their capital projects.
I'd like to offer what I thought about this when I looked at it, because initially I was thinking that, it might be prudent to take the pessimistic approach, but actually I landed on agreeing with what has been done in the 4-year projection. I think you're comparing apples with apples if you stay without the charter school. But when you do that, you recognize, A, that you've got to do some contingency planning really deeply and hard. But the reason I'm not sure that it's such a good idea to put a contingency plan in a 4-year projection is that one's going to have a wide range of estimating variance. And it may be better, there'll be less wheel spinning to do that for real, maybe as early as a month into the year that you got to start planning. But for the purpose of this projection now, keep it consistent, simple, with a huge red flag footnote that we've got to do some big time contingency planning. But I think we can do it either way, but I was actually comfortable with what I've just described as a way of presenting it.
I guess my feeling is I always like to see what the plan B is. And I understand that these are, formal documents that have to be submitted to the state for our 4-year plan. But given that if the charter school gets the go ahead and their opening is next August, then, I think having that, even if it's not an official budgetary plan, we haven't seen any budget numbers in terms of taking that potential enrollment decrease into account and adjustments for staff and things like that. So I would just encourage that as we move forward, that we have, maybe it's not an official budget plan for 21-22, but a potential plan B in case the charter school opens. So we have some sense of how is this going to affect our staffing besides the regular decrease in enrollment, if we get a bigger hit. So I would hope that we can have those honest conversations and see how that would affect the budget, because we haven't seen that impact on staffing and our budgetary numbers yet.
It sounds like a workshop topic for us. And I'm wondering, given that we're going to be having a change in staff in our accounting department, what would be the earliest time that we could realistically expect a new person to hit the ground running and be ready to work with the board on that kind of a workshop? Paul, I maybe don't expect you to answer that right now, but
it'd probably be at least a couple months before I feel like the individual would be hired to get feet on the ground, to feel comfortable to give it. But what I hear, I think are two valid requests. First, with Martin's to say, let's put in the reductions within the current F-195, and then Michelle's to be able to say, there's a high likelihood, I think, we're probably in that probably 90% range that charter school is going to open. Where we can be is, from that 20 to 70 students that would leave us. I think understanding that plan B, and that we would be working with the new CFO on those types of pieces, so they are ready for a good board workshop. I think we could honestly be ready for a good financial workshop somewhere in that end of September, Laura. If we find some people out of this interview, that would all be contingent on the people who've applied. Someone in that pool is exceptional, and we hire them in the next coming weeks. If we have to repost, that would change all that timeline.
Yeah, life goes on though. I mean,
Yep,
we have to rely on our support staff. We've got great, people who can pitch hit if necessary, because we're gonna have to.
Yep, I would agree with that. So we can be looking at the end of September.
Yeah, And just to clarify, Paul, I think it was just confused words, but I said I was comfortable with leaving the F-195 the same way it is without the charter school, provided we're really ready to do that hard contingency planning as soon as possible. I don't think we gain a lot by doing a somewhat artificial device that's not a hard plan.
Unless
Okay,
it
so-
impacts our bond rating. That's the one thing I heard that made a little alarm bell go off, is that we are showing that deficit in the fourth year. And, you know, we don't want to impact our bond rating, especially if we're thinking that we might be going out for high school bond at some time the next couple of years.
Yeah, but those are two different things, Laura. The bond rating was related to the gradual decline in general enrollment independent of the charter school. And I think, yeah, the reserve being below 5% had nothing to do with the charter school. It had to do with not adjusting the expense projection for a slightly declining enrollment. And I think I heard Paul and Larry say that they and Karen would get together and make a parameter adjustment that was more realistic so that that did not happen.
Okay, I thought it had to do with running a deficit budget for, I'm not finding the page now, how many years in a row? Did we do that just 1 year or 2 years?
Right now it's showing 3, it's the significantly in 3 years.
Could you repeat that, Larry? I didn't catch that.
Neither.
The F-195F shows significant spend down of the fund balance in the 3 out years. $1 million in the first year, out year, and then 3 million, 3.5 million.
And does that not affect our bond rating?
Or interest rate? Yeah, since the Great Recession, the bond agencies pay a lot more attention to fund balance decline now, and so it's probably not in our best interest to show that, because in reality that wouldn't happen anyway. The board would make adjustments and to keep the fund balance in a reasonable place.
Okay, just to summarize then. So what we will do is we will put those reductions in this F-195 prior to us posting it in July, to make sure that we're very conscious of what the spend down of the fund balance would be. So we will take an analysis. Karen and I'll work with Karen tomorrow, making sure that we get those right numbers so we can get the fund balance, so we're not spending down that fund balance. The other piece that Michelle mentioned is a piece that we'll hold for right now, but it is a plan B, knowing that this is a high likelihood that the charter school will be here and they will be taking some of our students over into their facilities. Does that sound like a good summary?
Mm-hmm.
And then what I'll do is, once I have the F-195 updated, I will send that to the board and text the board and let them know that it's there for you to look at prior to me posting it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your flexibility on that.
Oh, no, that was good. That was a great conversation. That was really good.
Okay, Larry, any more?
No, that's it. Those are the 4 slides.
Hey, hallelujah. Thanks, Larry.
You're welcome.
And with that, tonight is actually Larry's last night.
Oh,
Going on a long vacation, but it's starting tomorrow morning for him. And then he's, July 1, he starts a different kind of vacation with he and his wife and the family. So again, we're super blessed to have had Larry navigate us through these last couple of years. You know, that first year that he was here in the district was going through significant reductions. And boy, you talk about throwing a CFO into the gauntlet. That is probably one of the most challenging times for any CFO, is to come into a new district. And it wasn't like it was a couple $100,000 reduction. We're talking significant reductions. And from my perspective, looking from the outside in, and Laura and Michelle, you could attest to this, the work that he did to help the board and help the administration get to where they needed to be. And then for me personally, as I said, Larry is, he has been there to support me in understanding where I needed to raise my level of understanding on a Washington finance from a school perspective. He has been outstanding, and that doesn't even encapsulate the other 25 years of public service in other school districts around Washington, and the work that he's done for many, many individuals. So Larry, thank you. Board members?
Congratulations, Larry. And we do, as I'll just echo Paul's comments, we do appreciate the trial by fire that you've been through in the past 2 years, and you helped us through a difficult time. We're sorry to see you go, but you deserve it. Sounds like you've put in many, many years, and I hope you have a wonderful retirement.
Thank you.
I would like to echo that as well, Larry. You have been just phenomenal as a CFO for our district, and I hate to see you go, but I want to thank you for all your years of service in Washington State and to our district, and I hope you have a wonderful retirement. So thank you, and happy trails. I hope that retirement is wonderful.
And Larry, I'd like to thank you, and I want to add a comment that I received from one of your colleagues. As a person who's been both in production management and later on in financial management, it's really valuable when financial managers get to hang out of their office and into other people's buildings and work with them doing practical things. And I'll just pick one, Skill Center, Peter Jelsing. He was incredibly appreciative of what you did to get out there and help them practically and handle the management of that building. And that's the kind of characteristic that's really great to have. Thank you very much, and all the best in retirement.
I had the honor to work with Larry for a short time. Yes, he came in at a difficult time for the district. And on top of that, surprise, the district owns a mobile home park that we have to deal with and clean up. It was wonderful working, with Larry and supporting him in whatever way I was able to. So I'm excited for you. I'm excited for this next chapter. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your kind comments.
Yeah.
Looking forward.
Thank you for your heart. Thank you for your work, and enjoy retirement.
Thank you. Thank you. I will.
All right, Larry, you can hit the road. We're going to even let you leave early from the board meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Larry.
Well, thank you.
Okay, moving along in the agenda, looks like we're at board communication. This is the time when board members share any outside communications that they might have had since the last time we were together. Are there any board members that want to share any communications?
I'll just share briefly. Laura asked me to kind of look into some legislative updates. I know the legislators doing their special session right now. They are not being very clear on posting agendas and what exactly is going on, but we know it'll have some budget impacts. So I'll keep an eye on that and maybe report back, because I don't have really a firm grasp on what's relevant happening right now. The other relevant piece, the comprehensive sex ed bill, as you may have known, was signed by the governor in March, scheduled to take effect, but it did get enough referendum petition signatures, so it will be hitting the ballots in November. So we've got some time to maybe decide if whether the board wants to take a position on that ballot measure. But we can talk about it some other time. It's getting long tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Julie. And just want to encourage you and Michelle, because you both serve on state committees that are our rep is on the state committees, Don't wait for me to ask you if there's an update. Tell me you need the floor and it will be yours. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Michelle?
So I wanted to share, with COVID-19, we have a number of things in our communities and our schools that it's affected, including WIAA with our schools. And I would encourage you all to check out the WIAA.com website. They have some very recent updates on returning to activity guidelines. Now, it is very specific and also very general in some areas. And I think it is probably something that we as a district are going to have to look at. They kind of rank different fall activities in terms of low risk, moderate risk, high risk. For example, football is a high risk activity in terms of COVID-19. There's a lot of physical, interactions with players, equipment that's being going from one player to another. So something that's a lower risk is cross country. However, I've had children that have done cross country, and we know that students don't spend their time running 6 feet apart. They run in kind of big mobs and they pass each other and they kind of sometimes brush past other runners. So, so there are some qualifications for athletes. This is not athletes in masks. This is athletes for practices and using social distancing or pods of students. So it's all, I want to say it's kind of experimental at this point because we haven't gone down this road yet, and they're trying to be consistent with state guidelines. So I think more is going to come out of this. I think we're going to have to revisit this in August, but there haven't been any decisions made. They're trying to, again, like I said, share some guidelines, but I think it's really going to depend on how our state is responding and what the infection rate is. So stay tuned.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Appreciate that. Any other board members?
I think, Laura, I'd like to say something. It's not a specific communication. It's coming in from all sides, and it's really putting a practical planning face on the numbers that we've just looked at in the budget. And I recognize that the district, the board, and the community have got several steps between the preliminary draft that we looked at today and the adoption of the final budget in August. And I think it is helpful openly to paint a picture that fleshes out the biggest assumptions and consequences, because they're integral to how the budget planning decisions that the school district is making are going to be made. And I think it's helpful to benchmark those real world characteristics to the 3 board values we've got of excellence in learning, accountability, and equity. So I just wanted to kind of walk through the outside world hitting us and how it fits with our values and the numbers we just looked at from an outsider's point of view. This next budget year is one of unprecedented uncertainty. We all know that. And the first great one is how the Hang students will be taught. And I put in some words here that I think make us put that sense of practicality. It'll take a superhuman effort to teach face-to-face inside completely worked school interiors, while at the same time listening to the superintendent of public instruction and being immediately ready to offer high-quality distance learning or blended hybrids if there are different needs of different students, or if the pandemic throws us something completely different. So when we look at the numbers in the budget, that same state superintendent of public instruction in his guidance has expressed an intention that the K-12 funding should be maintained for the 2021 academic year. And it's also a constitutional priority. So that's what we're looking at behind having a stable revenue basis. But that's a privilege at this time to have a stable revenue to do your work. And that's what we show in the device, and we need to explain it to the outside world. But that does require us to make that same superhuman effort, or not me, but the employees of the school district. That's essential. And that's where we get to excellence in learning, one of the three values. And I would characterize that preliminary budget, draft budget, it's an all hands on deck plan that gives our schools every resources we can find at a time of greatest need. Now, here's another fact that I think Michelle alluded to too. The pandemic has hurt vulnerable people more than the privileged. And what's happened in our schools isn't an exception. We could read about it and see it. And public schools, we know, are places where we can best combat the unfair impact of the pandemic. So for equity values, that same stable, privileged revenue that we're looking at is all hands on deck. And our part is to give a superhuman effort using all the resources we can muster, which then brings us to the nasty bit, accountability. It exists by responding really, really strongly to that funding and returning with that superb effort. But then we're looking at the second great uncertainty, and this is more than a charter school. The whole world faces an unknowable economic consequences of the pandemic. So back to back with saying for 1 year, we've got a budget with maximum effort, and we've got to then be alert and willing to handle promptly, in good faith, and with teamwork, surprises, if they happen to be severely economic consequences. It is prudent to be transparent and to admit that we do face that risk. And then I thought, as an afterthought, let's be optimistic. Every crisis generates different and better ways to do things. And we've seen and heard of the dramatic ideas and insightfulness that's coming into education. But I wanted to put a human and practical and person face on the numbers, and that's my comment for this week.
Thank you, Martin. Anyone else? Okay, moving along to the superintendent's report and your COVID-19 update.
Yeah, so very similar to what Martin was talking about in unprecedented times. It's making sure that we're spending the necessary time to understand OSPI's guidance, their mitigating strategies, and how do we reopen our schools on August 26th. That is literally where we're at. Sat in a meeting for a number of hours today. I see Mike and Stacy on there. We're trying to make sure that we're making the most thoughtful decision for our students in the best way to bring our students back. Because the honest answer right now is the 6 feet distancing, we think works for most of our elementary schools to be able to bring them back on a daily basis. We think. Where we're struggling is at the secondaries, because as I said last week, we've got large schools and at the secondary level, there are bigger class sizes as well. So we're really trying to figure out what does this look like and with these mitigation strategies. And again, the one that is the most challenging to be able to figure out is this 6 foot distance from each other. And our classrooms just aren't large enough. And then you throw the high school in there and becomes a bigger challenge. So that's where we're at right now of thinking, problem solving. Every once in a while, the superintendent goes into a meeting and throws wrenches into it to continue to push us to think a little bit differently and make sure that we're thinking about every situation possible, even if it's a non-starter for us. I can't tell you, and this goes back to my earlier comment. We're really lucky to have Mike Lane as executive director. He just continues to push and have this high expectation. Stacy Bain has just jumped in beautifully. They really are a really great team who are moving the needle on this conversation. And it feels slow, but we've got to come to some decisions here in the next week. So then we can start planning the actual instruction. But I can't tell you how thankful I am to have these two people along with the rest of my cabinet, because it is a true team effort of coming back together to really think through problems, because every time there's always an HR piece. Kelly's right there on the side. So I'm hopeful by next Tuesday, we'll be able to give the board a little bit more as to the potential pathways where we're looking to dive a little bit deeper into. Today, I don't have okay, we're going to do this, this, and this. Today we know for the most part, our elementary students can have face-to-face instruction 5 days a week. We think at most of our schools. We're still struggling with a couple of our bigger elementaries, but we should have that hammered out, in the next day or two. It really is about the secondaries. What type of hybrid? We're kind of into that. What does hybrid really mean? And that was a conversation that was happening in my office where I'm like, I need concrete. What does hybrid look like? What does it look like when a student's sitting in the classroom? What does it look like when a student is at home doing some of this work? So that's the reality of where we're at. Hopefully on Tuesday, I'll be able to share more detailed plans with you. But and I also, we have our principals, they're all in. Again, I was in a Zoom meeting today with all the secondary leaders, and their care and their passion just continues to impress me, because each one continues to push different areas that we have to be thoughtful about. Because ultimately, and one of our leaders continued to do this today, and I so appreciate it. He's like, but remember, we've got to make sure safety, that we're not being shut down again. So we can't just keep pushing more and more kids into our schools. We've got to be really, really thoughtful about the numbers and what happens if we're shut down again. And I think that's a good, so it was a good reminder to us that we can't also be part of the problem and cause a shutdown. Because what we knew about COVID is indoors, a lot of people, generally not good. What are we creating? Indoors, a lot of people. So we've got to be very careful and make sure we are following all those mitigating strategies. Long-winded way to say we have incredible people in this district who are being very thoughtful on every front. And as Mike said this the other day, Ron Brown is literally in every group because we need a technology person to have that lens across the board. They just really are doing great things. Mark is really leading up all of the logistical kind of stuff, all the, how are we cleaning these buildings? How are we transporting? If we do a hybrid, what does that look like? And how do we get kids to and from on that front, and really work with the transportation team? It really is going well, but we don't have anything specific right now. But I'm hopeful I can get that to you on Tuesday. A little bit more detail, not the whole plan.
Lots to think about.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so moving right along, the board will now enter into recess into a closed meeting for a period of approximately 30 minutes. Collective bargaining sessions with employee organizations, including contract negotiations and discussions related to the interpretation or application of a labor agreement, or when the board is planning or adopting the strategy or position to be taken during the course of collective bargaining, professional negotiations, or mediation proceedings, or reviewing the proposals made in the negotiations or proceedings while in progress. Pursuant to District Policy Number 1410 and RCW 42.30.140, this discussion is exempt from the Open Public Meetings Act and will be closed to the public, and the school board is not expected to take final action following the closed meeting. So thank you, everyone. And Ron, if you will disconnect us from the live feed.
Stopping that right now.